in innate immunity, I will discuss about the phagocytosis, the complement system, and the hormonal mechanism also. In our body also, in the immune system, mainly it includes the different types of the organs like the spleen, complementary system, antibodies, WBC cells, and the bone marrow, and the hormone also. And the study mainly in the defense mechanism. Now, what is immunology? Immunology means the study of the body defense mechanism against the invading pathogens. Invading pathogens is the causative organism or the causative microorganism. That may be virus, that may be bacteria, that may be fungus. That is called as the invading pathogens. And the study of the body's defense mechanism against the invading pathogens is called as the immunology. And mainly there are two types of this immunology, non-specific, two types of defense mechanism. One is the specific defense mechanism, and the another one is the non-specific defense mechanism. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So in our in the immunity system, mainly you can see the skin. This is the very indeed the first line of the defense mechanism of the body. The body has yet another second line of defense mechanism about which we will be lead later. Mainly in the non-specific defense mechanism, it is subdivided into two types: first line defense mechanism and the second line defense mechanism. In the first line defense mechanism, it is the externally, and it is includes mainly the skin and the gut bacteria. Gut bacteria means in the intestinal wall there is some effective bacteria is there, and that bacteria is mainly responsible for the food digestion, and that comes under the first line of defense mechanism. And secretion of the skin and the mucous membrane, and mucous membrane, skins, horny layers. These all are comes under the first line of defense mechanism. It is externally, it includes the what? Skin and the gut bacteria, secretion of the skin and the mucous membrane. This skin and mucous membrane is also present outside, means below the dermal layer, and mucous membrane. Mucous membrane may be present everywhere inside the body. Where is the where we will find the maximum mucous membrane inside our body?
Yes, ma'am. Mouth and intestine.
Nose. Nose.
Nose.
Good. And any other part?
And mucous membrane, stomach layer, remember mucous membrane is there.
And someone is told you gastrointestinal tract also. And another part?
Intestine.
Other part? What is the
Vagina also harbor of bacteria. Vagina, ma'am.
Very good, very good. And the other parts? In eyes?
Rectum. Eye, yes.
Eyes.
One thing. Actually, in our body, inside our body, every parts, every major and major and minor organs, or each and every system of the body is consist of the what? Mucosal layer is there. If mucosal layer is not there, what will happen? That layer becomes dry. Okay. And due to that dryness of that particular organs or particular layer of that system, it causes the different types of what? Viral or fungal or bacterial infection. Okay. Specifically, in eyes also mucosal layer is there. Due to the lubrication, due to the presence of this mucosal layer, eyes always in the lubricated in nature. Okay. If in some cases, if there is infection in the microbial infection, in that cases, if you will look at the eye, it will be becomes dry in nature. If dry will be there inside the eye, then that part, not only I am talking about the eye, where the mucous membrane is present, the mucous membrane is mainly responsible for the secretion of the mucus. And that mucus is very good, act as the very good for the against the bacteria, virus, and the fungus. If that area will be not lubricated, then what will happen? That area, if that will be dry in nature, then in dry area, the chances of infection will be more. Okay, you in the look at the skin during the winter season, maximum patients coming for the skin allergic only. Why it is occur? Why it is occurring during the winter only?
विंटर में स्किन ड्राई हो जाते हैं.
Why? What is the reason?
Winter more like
म्यूकोजल सिक्रेशंस होता है वो स्लो डाउन
more
हो जाता है.
moisturizer in climate.
No. In the skin mucosal layer, in the skin, where is the mucosal layer is present in the dermal layer? Is the mucosal layer is present in the dermal layer? No. In our skin, porous is there, and in from the porous, sebaceous gland is there. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
All of you understood now what I am saying?
Yes, ma'am.
In our skin, throughout our body, skin is innervated, and the skin and there are numbers of pores is present inside in our skin, and
Skin, yes.
in that poral area, sebaceous gland is also there. That from that sebaceous gland, every day, what will secreted from the sebaceous gland?
सीबम.
What?
सीबम.
Sebum. Okay, and that
Sweat.
is yes, and due to that only our skin will be not prone towards the any kind of infection. But in some cases, those who are having the dry skin, they are having the many skin disorder. Okay, because in dry area, if there is no sebaceous gland and nothing will be secreted from the skin, normal area, then what will happen? That area becomes dry in nature. After the dry of that particular organ, that area, in that area there may be increases the infection. There may be chance of increase of the microsomal infection. Due to that only, during the summer, during the winter, the rate of infection in the dermal area will be increases than that of the other season. Okay, you look at the, if we will go to the OPD, skin OPD, you will go through the number of cases they are coming like psoriasis, dermatitis, and leukoderma, and each and every type of skin disorder will be there because of this. What? Due to the lacking of this what? Why all these things are occurring? What is the reason behind it?
सेबेशियस ग्लैंड से सीबम को सिक्रेशन लो हो जाता है.
That is also major cause.
Immunity.
And second thing is that due to the dryness. Okay, where is the dry? If some part of the body will be dry, in that dry area, that is the very prominent part in where the infection will be more. Okay, if we will compare, and in the, I already discussed about the mucosal layer. In the if I will consider about the gastrointestinal tract or respiratory tract, otherwise in the vaginal tract or male or female reproductive organ also, if that mucosal layer will be dry, in that cases, the infection must be there. In the dry area, the infection will be grow very rapidly. Okay, that's why for any kind of skin infection, those who are the recurrent skin infection, in that cases, now always the dermatologist suggests to the patient for the external application of the what? Coconut oil. Okay, and that coconut oil contains the high amount of MCT form of fat. Okay, medium chain triglycerides fat. That means it contains the healthy fats. By applying that fat, it will not grows the microorganism. It will not. It will kill the microorganism. Okay, that's why if some area will be dry, in the dry area, the rate of infection will be more than that of the wet area due to the presence of this sebaceous gland. Otherwise, that mucosal layer, it secretes the mucus in that particular region. after the secretion of the mucus, it will very helpful for the, it act as the anti-infectional and anti-inflammatory properties also. समझ में आ रही है ना मैं क्या बोल रही हूँ?
Yes, ma'am.
प्रियंका, प्रियंका मैडम बुझी पारुछंती? Are you understood what I am saying? प्रियंका, are you there now?
Yes ma'am, sorry actually ma'am ମୁଁ ଆଜି first join କଲି ତ ଆପଣ book ରୁ ପଢଉଛନ୍ତି या କିଛି slide ରୁ ପଢଉଛନ୍ତି?
ମୁଁ ଯୋଉଥିରେ ବି ପଢିଲି ତ ଆମକୁ ତ ପାଠ ପଢିବାର ହିଁ ଅଛି ନା, ମୁଁ ବୁକ୍ ରୁ ହିଁ ନଉଛି, ସ୍ଲାଇଡ୍ ବି କିଛି କିଛି ଇଏ କରୁଛି। ଏଇଟା ଯୋଉ ଆମେ ପାଠ ମାନେ ଆମ ସାଇନ୍ସ ଭିତରେ ପଢିଲା ଭିତରେ ବି ଆମେ ଟିକେ ଟପିକ ରୁ ଟିକେ ଆମେ ଯାଉଛନ୍ତି, ସେଟା ମୁଁ डिस्कशन କରୁଛି। नहीं ମୁଁ ପଚାରିବା କଥା ଏବେ ଯାହା କହିଲି समझ में आ रही है ना मैं क्या अभी बोला?
जी मैम, जी मैम।
किसके बारे में मैं अभी बोल रही हूँ बताओ मुझे?
Mucosa membrane. You are studying about mucosa membrane.
Mucosal, where it is situated?
Inside our mouth.
Yes, very good. Not only in the mouth, each and every smooth muscles, smooth muscular organ, it contains the mucosal layer. Okay.
Yes.
तो मैं ऑलरेडी बता दिया, अगर म्यूकोजल लेयर में जिस लोगों का म्यूकोजल लेयर में म्यूकोस प्रॉपर्ली सिक्रेशन नहीं होता है तो वो पर्टिकुलर पार्ट क्या होता है ना, वो ड्राई हो जाता है ड्यू टू बिकॉज ऑफ ड्राई की वजह से इस जगह पर्टिकुलर एरिया में थोड़ा इन्फेक्शन का चांसेस ज्यादा रहता है, जैसे स्किन में भी वही प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है। ड्यूरिंग द विंटर क्या होता है ना, हमारा जो सेबेसियस ग्लैंड होता है वो प्रॉपर्ली एक्टिवेशन नहीं होता है, एंड अदर डाइटरी फैक्टर इज आल्सो रिस्पांसिबल फॉर दैट, एंड ऑल दिस फैक्टर्स, एंड हमारा जितना ड्राई स्किन होगा तो उसमें क्या हुआ ना, माइक्रोजोमल इन्फेक्शन ज्यादा उस जगह में होगा। अगर वेट होगा तो इसकी वजह से वो क्या करेगा, जो माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिज्म उसका मल्टीप्लिकेशन उसका इन्फेक्शन बढ़ रहा है वो उसको ग्रो करने नहीं देगा। तो इसीलिए हमारा स्किन को ऑलवेज विल बी अप्लाई सम एक्सटर्नली दैट उसको लुब्रिकेटेड होना चाहिए। फॉर द लुब्रिकेशन ऑफ दैट स्किन ना वी हैव इट्स वेरी गुड टू अप्लाई द व्हाट, pure coconut oil, because it contains the MCT form of fat, and that fat is very good for the strengthening of our dermal and epidermal layer. Understood? All of you understood what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
एंड हमारा जो फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म होता है ना, इट मेनली इंक्लूड्स द फर्स्ट लाइन में आपका आएगा जो स्किन, एक्सटर्नली आप लोग देख रहे हैं जो स्किन, नहीं तो जो हमारा जो इंटेस्टाइनल ट्रैक्ट है ना, टोटल इंटेस्टाइन स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम द बुक्कल कैविटी टू एंड्स विद द एनस, इस तक जो गट जो लाइन होता है, जो पाइप होता है, उसको उधर जो बैक्टीरिया डेवलप हो रहा है वो गट बैक्टीरिया होता है, ये भी आपका फर्स्ट लाइन डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म में आएगा। एंड सिक्रेशन ऑफ द स्किन एंड द म्यूकस मेम्ब्रेन, फ्रॉम द म्यूकस मेम्ब्रेन म्यूकस इज सिक्रेटेड, एंड फ्रॉम द स्किन in the skin also it secreted the sebum, and the mucous membrane and the skin's honey layer जो होता है, ये सब आपका आ जाता है फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म। इन द सेकंड लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म मेनली इट इंक्लूड्स द internal things. First one is the mainly natural cells is there. Two types of cells is present inside our body. I already discussed about that. One is the T cells, another one is the K cells. तो natural killer cells जो होता है ना, it comes under the second line of defense mechanism. And second thing is the fever. जब भी देखो किसी भी प्रॉब्लम हमारा बॉडी में शुरू हो जाता है ना, इनिशियली हमारा बॉडी एक मीन्स एक रेस्पॉन्ड लेता है, तो इस टाइम में क्या होता है ना, बॉडी में फीवर आ जाता है। देखो जब वायरल होता है, हमको जब भी काशी अदरवाइज नाजल स्नीजिंग होता है या एनी काइंड ऑफ URTI अपर रेस्पिरेटरी ट्रैक्ट इन्फेक्शन हो या LRTI लोअर रेस्पिरेटरी ट्रैक्ट इन्फेक्शन, एनी टाइप ऑफ इन्फेक्शन में आप देखो ना, पहले आपका पॉजिटिव सिम्टम्स जो होता है वो फीवर होता है, ठीक है। और फीवर की वजह से अगर स्किन में कुछ स्किन नॉर्मल इन्फेक्शन भी शुरू हो जाता है, अगर वायरल इन्फेक्शन की वजह से आपका बॉडी में इन द नॉर्मल एरिया सम चेंजेस विल बी टेक्स प्लेस, इन दैट केसेस आल्सो क्या होता है ना, पहले पॉजिटिव सिम्टम्स ए होता है फीवर, ओके। एंड यू रिमेम्बर वन थिंग, जिस लोगों का ना कभी भी फीवर नहीं होता है, उन लोगों का बॉडी का जो वाइटलिटी होता है, बॉडी का जो इम्यूनी सिस्टम होता है, वो अच्छी तरह से शायद काम नहीं कर रहा है, इसीलिए उसको फीवर ठीक से नहीं हो रहा है। तो रेगुलर इंटरवल में हमारा बॉडी में थोड़ा पॉजिटिव जो चीज हो रहा है ना, थोड़ा बहुत, जो किसी को लूज मोशन होता है, किसी को डायरिया होता है, डिसेंट्री होता है, फीवर होता है, एंड काशी होता है, नहीं तो कॉफ होता है, these all are the positive symptoms of the body. You don't take it the otherwise. But when we are affected by all these things, now we are thinking that what बॉडी का शायद वाइटलिटी नहीं है, शायद इम्यूनिटी सिस्टम प्रॉपरली काम नहीं कर रहा है, इसीलिए ही मेरे बच्चे को बार बार ये सब कॉम्प्लिकेशन हो रहा है। बट इट इज नॉट लाइक दैट। आपका बॉडी रेगुलर इंटरवल में, अगर आपको 6 मंथ में या 1 ईयर में एक बार 2 बार लूज मोशन हो रहा है, दैट मीन्स यू जो गट होता है, जो जीआई सिस्टम होता है, इट्स फंक्शनिंग प्रॉपरली। अंडरस्टूड ना व्हाट आई एम सेइंग? समझ में आ रहा है मैं क्या बोल रही हूँ?
यस मैम।
अगर बीच में हम लोगों का देखो, जो कार्सिनोमा जो होता है, जो कैंसर सेल बॉडी में डेवलप करता है, तो इसकी वजह से हमारा बॉडी का वाइटलिटी पूरा कम हो जाता है। तो वाइटलिटी कम होने से क्या होता है ना, कभी कभी हमको बहुत सारा बच्चे को देखो, आजकल ये भी दिखने का मिलता है, बहुत सारा पेरेंट्स आके ये भी कंप्लेन करते हैं मैडम इसको मैं बहुत लकी हूँ क्योंकि मेरे बच्चे को कभी भी ये वाला समस्या कभी भी नहीं होता है। बट नॉट लाइक दैट। हमारा बॉडी मीन्स बॉडी का एक इनेट इम्यूनिटी होता है, खुद का एक इम्यूनिटी होता है, एक्टिव इम्यूनिटी इज देयर, पैसिव इम्यूनिटी इज देयर। तो हमारा बॉडी को बीच में रेगुलर इंटरवल में ये सब पॉजिटिवली ये सब कुछ हो रहा है, तो इट्स टेक इट्स पॉजिटिव वे। अदरवाइज अगर कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, दैट मीन्स योर बॉडी का जो वाइटलिटी वो ठीक नहीं, शायद आगे जाके आपको कोई फाटल डिसऑर्डर हो सकता है। समझ में आ रहा है मैं क्या बोल रही हूँ?
Yes, ma'am.
So fever is the positive symptoms, okay, and the interference is also it comes under the second line defense mechanism, and inflammatory reaction and phagocytes, these all are comes under the second line defense mechanism. And another one is your inflammatory reaction. What do you mean by inflammatory reaction? इन्फ्लामेटरी रिएक्शन का मतलब क्या होता है?
Any bacteria invade, ma'am? Bacterial infection that
If there is any type of injury, then there is the histamine secretion at that area and inflammation takes place.
No, inflammation and infection and infestation, these three are different from each other. Understood? 3 words. One is the infection, second one is the infestation, third one is the inflammation, inflammatory reaction. What do you mean by inflammation? I'm asking about the inflammation.
any irritation or any kind of abnormal that site may occur, at that time inflammation may increase.
No. Inflammation means inflammation.
मैम
हाँ, yes, Swati.
मैम अगर कोई भी फॉरेन माइक्रोब अगर एंटर करता है बॉडी में, तो उस टाइम पे हमारा जो बॉडी है वो रेडनेस के कारण स्वेल हो जाता है, जिससे पता चलता है कि कोई फॉरेन पार्टिकल इन्वेड किया, और बॉडी वहाँ पे उसको प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए ही जो है ब्लड फ्लो को इंक्रीज कर देता है, जिससे इंजरी या फिर इन्फेक्शन जिस एरिया में हुआ है वहाँ पे रेडनेस कॉज हो जाता है।
Inflammation means is the 5 positive signs. ओके, हम लोग देखो कभी कभी जब एक्सटर्नली कोई इंजुरी होता है, ब्लड विल बी नॉट जस्ट फ्रॉम दैट पर्टिकुलर साइट्स ऑफ इंजुरी, बट एक्सटर्नली इंजुरी इज देयर इन दैट एरिया. इफ लुक एट दैट एरिया ना, दैट एरिया विल बी swollen. ओके, एंड जब कभी कभी हम लोग देखते हैं ना, जब हम पे जाता है तो क्या होता है ना, कोई जागृत internally blood will be not come out from that particular sites of injury, but वो क्या होता है ना, सुपरफिशियली वो एरिया पूरा इन्फ्लामेशन हो जाता है. इन्फ्लामेशन का मतलब है हमारा बॉडी में 5 साइंस दिखा जाएगा, उसको इन्फ्लामेशन बोलते हैं। जैसे आपका फर्स्ट साइन इज द इन द इन्फ्लामेशन में 5 चीज होगा। फर्स्ट वन इज जो जगह में आपका चोट लगा हुआ है उस जगह पहले रेडनेस दिखा जाएगा। Externally, if I will observe that particular area, it looks like red in color, and that area tenderness must be there. और अगर आप एक्सटर्नली आप हाथ ऐसे देखेंगे तो टेंडरनेस मस्ट बी देयर एंड पेन भी रहेगा एंड टेम्परेचर मस्ट बी देयर एंड स्वेलिंग मस्ट बी देयर। ये जो 5 साइंस है ना, ये 5 साइंस को मिला के जो सिम्टम्स डेवलप होता है उसको इन्फ्लामेशन बोला जाता है। समझ में आ रहा है अभी?
Yes, ma'am.
All of you understood what I am saying?
Yes, ma'am.
देखो, जब हमको कोई इंजरी होता है तो 2 टाइप्स का इंजरी होता है। एक तो एक्सटर्नली कोई इंजरी होता है एंड इंटरनली। दैट मीन्स व्हेन अवर इंटरनली, देखो जब कोई जगह में क्या होता है ना, जब एक्सटर्नली इंजरी होता है तो ब्लड पर्टिकुलर जगह में नहीं आता है, ठीक है। तो उस जगह में क्या होता है, उस जगह आधा घंटे के बाद 15 मिनट्स के बाद ऑटोमेटिकली पेन शुरू हो जाता है। जब पेन होता है ना, आप देखोगे तो पर्टिकुलर जगह में क्या होगा, थोड़ा स्वेलिंग दिखा जाएगा। सो नॉट ओनली स्वेलिंग इज द ओनली वन साइंस, along with the swelling temperature must be there. If you will be put your hands or if you will check the temperature of that particular area na, the temperature will be increased, must be increases in that area. Understood? And swelling, temperature, redness, tenderness, all these are the 5 signs of inflammation. इसको हम लोग बोलेंगे inflammation. And you know what is infection? After the infection, if it will be spread for the maximum area, then it is called as the infestation. Understood?
Ma'am, please again repeat the infection.
Inflammation.
Ma'am, infestation.
After infection, okay. इन्फेक्शन के बाद जो हम लोग उसको मैनेजमेंट करेंगे, जितना एरिया में वो स्प्रेड करेगा वो इन्फेस्टेशन, ओके। बट इन योर सब्जेक्ट ना, आपको याद रखना पड़ेगा व्हाट इज इन्फ्लामेशन। इट इज वेरी वाइटल। आगे जाके आप जो भी पढ़ेंगे पैथोलॉजी में या जो आपका जो थेरापेटिक न्यूट्रिशन आएगा, थेरापेटिक न्यूट्रिशन में हम लोग क्या पढ़ेंगे ना, पर्टिकुलर हमारा जो सिस्टम होता है ना, जो 9 सिस्टम इज प्रेजेंट इनसाइड आवर बॉडी ना, जो भी सिस्टम है, तो उस सिस्टम का डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ डिजॉर्डर तो होता है ना, उस डिजॉर्डर को मैनेजमेंट करने के लिए हम जो ट्रीटमेंट करेंगे वो तो थेरापेटिक न्यूट्रिशन में हम लोग पढ़ेंगे, लेकिन जो डिजीज वगैरह हम पढ़ेंगे उसमें इन्फ्लामेशन का वर्ड बार बार आएगा आपका, ठीक है। तो इन्फ्लामेशन, ये जो 5 साइंस दिखा जाएगा बॉडी में उसको ही इन्फ्लामेशन बोलते हैं। एंड यू नो द इन्फेक्शन, एंड हम लोग इसको कैसे मैनेजमेंट करेंगे, इन्फेक्शन को कितना एरिया को स्प्रेड होता है, इसको इन्फेस्टेशन बोला जाता है। अभी समझ में आ रहा है हम सबको?
Yes, ma'am.
All of you understood what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Then this is the second line defense mechanism. Then I will discuss about the non-specific defense mechanism. In the non-specific defense mechanism, one is the external defense mechanism and the another one is the internal defense mechanism. And the external defense mechanism, mainly the external defense mechanism, it comprises of the mainly 2 types of barriers. One is the chemical barriers and second one is the physical barrier. These chemical barrier and physical barriers to the entry of the mainly pathogens, okay. Physical barriers are primarily of mainly 2 types. One is the skin and the mucus. This is externally, okay. In the external, I already discussed about this. External defense mechanism means skin is the first external defense mechanism. In the skin, mucous membrane is also there. Mucous membrane mainly present inside our all the smooth muscles and all the organs also and all the system also. Inside our all the each and every system, mucous membrane is there. In the digestive system, urinary system, gastrointestinal system, genitourinary system, respiratory tract, it opens out at one or both the ends. ये सुनो, हमारे हम लोग जो भी सिस्टम पढ़ते हैं ये शुरू होता है एक जगह से एंड होता है, तो पूरा ये दोनों ही एंड ही उसका ओपन रहता है. दे डू नॉट हैव द डायरेक्ट कम्युनिकेशन विद द अदर पार्ट्स ऑफ द बॉडी. ये हमारा क्या होता है, जो हमारा पैरासाइट्स होता है, द पैरासाइट्स माइक्रोब्स प्रेजेंट आर नॉट इन द फिजियोलॉजिकल इंटीरियर ऑफ द बॉडी. जो म्यूकस मेम्ब्रेन होता है ना, म्यूकस मेम्ब्रेन इन दिस ट्रैक्ट आर ट्रीटेड एज ए पार्ट ऑफ द एक्सटर्नल डिफेंस mechanism, and these membrane can resist entry of the parasite microbes into the tissue. Mucus trap the microorganism and immobilize them, and this mucus is a clear sticky substance and has a glycoprotein and water. Mainly this mucus is consist of glycoprotein and water, and it's very clear and the sticky substance. Due to the presence of this glycoprotein inside the mucus, it acts as the anti-infectional properties. The microbes get trapped in the sticky fluid. Okay, and the role of the mucus in the body system and the organ, mainly in the gastrointestinal system. If I will consider about the GI system, the microbes, that means that microbes present, that glycoprotein and the microns which enter through these mouth, it caught in the mucus and eliminated with the sputum. A coating of the mucus over the internal lining also trap the microbes for removing in the feces also. Okay, in the respiratory system, also, the microorganism and the dust particles often enter the respiratory tract with air during the breathing also. And इसमें क्या होता है ना, many of these are caught in the hair mass present inside the nostril, and those which are filtered and trapped in the mucus that covers the tract. And the cilia sweeps the mucus loaded with the pathogens and dust particles into the pharynx, and further it is thrown out, swallowed and eliminated through the feces. This is respiratory tract. Inside the respiratory tract, mainly cilia is present, and due to the presence of hair follicles inside the nose also, it acts as the what? It filtered and trapped in the mucus, and that covers the tract. In eyes also, eyes mainly secretion from the tears gland, and the flickering movement of the eyelids flushes out the microorganisms settling on the eyeballs from the air. कभी भी देखो आँख में अगर कुछ भी आ जाता है ना एक्सटर्नली, तो हमारा आई का जो म्यूकस मेम्ब्रेन होता है वो उसको पूरा उसके माध्यम से ही वो अजय लैक्रिमेशन करके वो बाहर से निकल जाता है. वो भी एक एक्ट एज द एक्सटर्नली डिफेंस mechanism. And internal tract, in our body also some internal tract like the saliva and digestive juices, bile is secreted from the liver and urine. Various tracts in the body are flushed with the fluids, these fluids. All of these can sweep and trap the microbes very easily. And that skin is also act as the what? Physical barrier, and this is a first line of external defense mechanism, because due to the presence of the skin provides nice protective covering to the body, and mainly the outer layer, that means in the dermal layer of the skin, the horny layer is present, and that horny layer mainly contains dead keratinized cell, and these cells have hard insoluble fibers, and that protein is called the keratin. Instead of soft protoplasm, this layer is waterproof and germ-proof. It can prevent entry of the virus and bacteria inside our body. This is all about your physical barrier. In the chemical barrier, mainly the skin and mucous membrane secrete certain chemicals, and that disposes the pathogens, and mainly it includes the what? Tears. In our eyes, tears is present, and saline fluid secreted by the one gland is present besides our eye. It is called as the lacrimal gland. It secretes the saline fluid and has the lysosomal activity, which prevents the eye infection due to the secretion of this saline fluid from the lacrimal gland. It acts as the lysosomal activity. Due to the presence of lacrimal gland, it secretes it helps for the lacrimation, and due to the presence of lacrimal gland, it secretes the saline fluid-like fluid, and it acts as the lysosomal activity, and mainly it prevents the eye infection. And nasal also secretes some harmful in nasal also, nasal fluid is also there, and due to the presence of this fluid, it mainly helpful for the destroy of the harmful organism due to the lysosomal activity of the nasal secretion. Similarly, bile is secreted from the liver, and that bile is alkaline in nature, mainly due to the presence of bile. It checks the growth of the foreign bacteria on the partially digested food. After the partially digested food, it also, due to the presence of bile inside, due to the presence of this bile, it's alkaline in nature. It also check the growth of the foreign bacterial infection or any kind of viral infection also. Saliva also contains the microorganism which are not the normal inhabitant, but dead microbes are passively flushed by the saliva and swallowed. And gut secretion from the gut also, from the GI tract also, it secretes the saliva, and the respiratory tract, it also secretes the different types of enzymes, and different mucous membrane is also there, that bacteria reach the gut, and they are also killed by the hydrochloric acid and the proteolytic enzyme of the gastric juice. This hydrohCl is secreted from the intestinal tract, and it's also its nature is the proteolytic enzyme of the gastric juices. They are mainly helpful for the killing of the microbes, and if they further escape and reach the large intestine, and they are attacked by the gut microbes, which secretes the antibody, and that kills many pathogenic bacteria like hepatitis A virus survives the gastric juices. This is all about your chemical barriers. From the chemical barrier, I already discussed about the skin secretion. Skin secretes the what? Mainly skin, from the skin, a oil or the sweat secreted by the sebaceous gland is present, and that sebaceous gland and the soporiferous gland is there above our dermal layer, and it contains mainly the lactic acid and the fatty acids also there, which makes the surface of the skin acidic in nature, and the pH of the acidic is 3 to 5. And due to the secretion of this acidic pH, mainly this prevents the organism from the infecting the skin. Some friendly bacteria which resides on the skin checks the growth of the microbes to a certain extent. Okay, and these lysosomal enzymes of the skin have the bactericidal effect. A lysosomal activity enzymes of the skin, okay, it acts as the antibacterial. That means it acts as the bactericidal effect. Thus, the skin becomes a self-disinfecting organ. From the vagina also, it also vaginal bacteria like certain bacteria normally live in the vagina, and they produce mainly lactic acid, and that lactic acid, the function of that lactic acid kills the bacteria, and hence these bacteria form the female best natural defense against the infection. And what is internal defense mechanism? In the internal, in the last class I already discussed about the WBC and platelet also. In the internal defense mechanism, mainly WBC play, or the leukocyte play, a major role, and these WBC cells are probably the most important part of our immune system. And WBC snaps to it during any infection. The number of leukocytes inside our blood cells will be increases. Okay, any infection, that may be in the bacterial, fungal or viral infection, in any infectional cases, the WBC cell will be increases, and the total leukocyte count is about 4,000 to 11,000 per cubic millimeter of the blood, and that means 50 to 70% are neutrophil, and 20 to 40% are lymphocytes. Monocytes is only 2 to 8%, and the basophil rate is only 1%, and the eosinophil is 1 to 4%. But in the any kind of infectional case, In that cases, all the ranges of these cells will be increases inside our body. The WBC mainly creeps out of the capillary by amyloidic movement into the intracellular spaces if there is an infection. This process is called as the diapedesis. This process is known as the diapedesis. Diapedesis is, what do you mean by diapedesis? Diapedesis is the WBC mainly जो होता है ना, वो creeps of the capillary by the amoeboid movement into the intracellular spaces. The space is present inside the cells. It is called as the intracellular spaces. If there is an infection, it is called as the diapedesis. And mainly the WBC are primarily of mainly two types. One is the granulocytes, another one is the agranulocytes. In the agranulocytes में क्या होता है ना, the cytoplasm में there is no granules is present inside the cytoplasm, and in the agranulocytes mainly includes the lymphocytes. Lymphocytes is the large nucleus, and the monocyte nucleus is the kidney cell. In the granulocytes, na, basophil is there, eosinophil is there, neutrophil is also there. Neutrophil 2 to 5 lobes generally, and eosinophil generally bilobe, and the basophil is generally bilobe. This is all about your granulocytes and agranulocytes. And in WBC also different types of cells is there, like the leukocytes, B cells, T cells, helper T cells, killer T cells, suppressor T cells, natural killer cells, phagocytes, macrophages, all these things. Neutrophil, what is neutrophil? Neutrophil is mainly inside our body, 50 to 70% of neutrophil cells is present, and they have the fine dust-like particles in the cytoplasm which stain the purplish, and if any infection will be there, in that cases, that 50 to 70% of neutrophil will be increases up to 90 to 100%. In case of any kind of viral infection or any kind of infection, the rate of neutrophil will be increases. And basophil also, it mainly they form only 0.05% of the leukocyte, and mainly basophil it release the histamine. I already discussed about this histamine that plays a major role for the inflammatory reaction. Due to the presence of this, due to the release of this histamine only, it causes the inflammatory reaction inside our body. And basophils also secretes the heparin, and that prevent the clotting of the blood in intact blood vessels. Due to the presence of this heparin only, it prevents the clotting of the blood. This can prevent the clot setting in heart, and also thus prevent an attack also. And it also helps in the expression of the IgE mediatic allergic, that is immunoglobulin E. And what is eosinophil? Inside our body, eosinophil is 1.5% of leukocyte is there, and that defend against the large parasites, that is blood flu. And in any infection, like the if they mainly due to the infection of the parasite or any kind of bacteria, the rate of the eosinophil will be increasing very rapidly. And mainly this eosinophil, it releases the histamine, it inhibits the mast cell degranulation, and thus reduce the allergic reaction. इसीलिए ना आप लोग देखोगे ना, कभी कभी जिसका eosinophil, if the any kind of infection, the eosinophil cell will increases ना, in that cases ना आपका क्या होता है, skin repeatedly they will be complain about the skin allergic due to the this is occurred due to the increase of this eosinophilia inside our blood cells. Then what is monocytes? Monocytes are the motile and occasionally show the phagocytic activity. And mainly 5% of this monocytes is present inside body, and mainly providing the more phagocytic defense properties. And monocytes mainly circulate in the blood only for the few hours and migrate into the tissue, change into macrophages. What is macrophages? Macrophages are the very large non-living effective phagocytes which enlarge out of the monocytes, and it is in the irregular cell about the 25 to 50 millimeter in the size. And these macrophages are of two types. One is fixed type of macrophages, and another one is the wandering type of macrophages. And the fixed type are located permanently in the certain organs like the connective tissue. Connective tissue in the histiocytes, these macrophages will be got. And the brain also, in the brain, microglial cell is there. Inside our brain, microglial cell is there, and there you will find this one. In the renal glomeruli means inside the kidney. Mesangial cells also it contains these macrophages. In liver also Kopler cells is there, and lungs alveolar macrophages. What are the function of the macrophages? Mainly chief function of the macrophages, it phagocytose microorganism and inert particles. Mainly it process and present the antigen to immune competent cells and destroy old RBC, initiate the catabolism of the new hemoglobin. And lymphocytes is the mainly agranulocytes, and the nucleus occupies almost the entire cells, and its diameter is about 6 to 18 millimeter. Sometimes it is divided into small and large lymphocytes. Lymphocytes is present 30 to 40% inside our body, and these lymphocytes come into two classes. One is B lymphocytes, another one is T lymphocytes. In the B cells, and another one is the T cells. B cells are the mature in the bone marrow, but the T cells is mature in the thymus. And these B cells mainly are stimulated, mature into the plasma cells, and these are the cells that produce the mainly antibody. But the killer cells, the T cells, are the detect cells in our body, and that are harboring viruses, and when it detects such as the cells, and it kills it also. Two types of T cells is there. One is the helper cells, and another one is the suppressor T cells. Okay, and these helps mainly sensitize killer T cells and control the immune responses. What is inflammatory responses? During the injury or during the burn or bite or cut of an animal brings foreign matter, that may be fungal, virus, bacteria or spores, to enter the tissue, and certain substance released by the damaged cells initiating formation of the blood clot, and clotting check the flow of the blood. From the immune system, and that standpoint, inflammation is a very good thing. It brings in more blood and it dilates the capillary walls, so that the more immune system cells can get to the sites of infection. And this is how it works. The invading microbes release their own toxic product, and that mast cells and the basophils release the histamine. Not only histamine released from the basophil, only inside our body also mast cells is present, and that mast cells is mainly responsible for the this release of this chemical messenger like the histamine. And chemical from the microbes and the histamines, they togetherly cause the dilation of the capillary and small blood vessels surrounding the injury, and mainly increase the permeability of the capillary wall. As a result, more flow of blood to that particular area, and making it red, warm, and fluid leaks out into these tissue spaces, causing it swelling. I already discussed about five signs of the inflammation. One is the redness. Warm means temperature must be there. Fluid leak into the tissue space causes the swelling. Swelling must be there, and this reaction of body is called as the inflammatory response. And it is this inflammatory response is the internal defense mechanism. And the neutrophils are also attracted to the site of the injury or infection by chemical or by injury cells elaborated by the bacteria and the histamine. And once the neutrophil reach the site, they move and eat of the microorganism. And by the time these macrophages of the connective tissue begins their protective action, mainly the monocytes also reach the site of infection and develops into large macrophages for additional phagocytosis, and they would further clean up the tissue and remain of the neutrophils. Certain substances in the plasma strongly stimulate the phagocytosis. They are called the opsonins, which in a way may make the bacteria destitute to the phagocytes. And how this pause formation occur? Pause formation, once the neutrophil finds a foreign particles or the bacteria, the main function of the neutrophils, it will engulf it, releasing the enzymes, hydrogen peroxide and other chemicals from its granules to kill the bacteria. And at the site of the serious infection, the pus will be formed. And pus is simply the dead neutrophil, and it is also the some cellular debris. Cellular debris means cell pieces. Many neutrophils and macrophages are killed by the toxin released by the highly virulent invaders. And the dead macrophages, mainly the microbes, are trapped by the still bigger phagocytes, and they form the protective barrier. Okay, and these phagocytes mainly enzymes, fluid, protein, damaged tissue cells, etc., leak from the capillaries and leave the body in the form of the pus. This is the, if pus is there, then you will be sure about that area must be affected by infection. Okay, what is fever? Fever means फीवर क्या होता है ना, जो एक्सटर्नली इंजुरी में जो फीवर होने के बाद ड्यू टू द इंजुरी, कट और बाइट, द इन्फ्लेमेटरी रिस्पॉन्स डेवलप, एंड दिस इज द लोकलाइज्ड और द सिस्टमिक. The localized response is confined to the site of injury, and the systemic response mainly affect the body in the case of severe infection or serious injury also. The WBC mainly count increases in the fever cases. Now, if you will check the WBC, if you will do the test of the DC, now you will got that the range of WBC will be increases, and body temperature also increases. This may be brought about by the toxin mainly produced by the pathogens, and it is protein called the endogenous pyrogens. Okay, during the fever, pyrogens is released, and when enough pyrogen reaches the brain, the body's thermostat is reset to higher the temperature, allowing the entire body temperature to be rises. What is complement system? Complement system is a series of proteins. Okay, and these are the only a handful of proteins in the complement system, and they are mainly floating freely in our blood. The complement proteins are activated by and work with the antibodies. Hence the name. They mainly cause the lysing of cells and signals to phagocytes that a cell needs to be removed. And what is interference? Interference with the mainly this interference interferes with the viruses, and mainly produced by the more cells in the body. Interference like the antibodies and the complement are the protein, and their job is to let cells signals to one another. And this interference, when a cell detect interference from other cells, it mainly produces the protein, and that protein will mainly help in the viral replication in the cells. Now, I will discuss about the specific defense mechanism. In specific defense mechanism, mainly major histocompatibility complex. Major histocompatibility complex is the MSC. This major histocompatibility complex is also known as the human leukocytes antigen, HLA. MSC is otherwise called as the human leukocyte antigen. MSC, that major histocompatibility complex molecules are important component of the immune response. They mainly allow the cell and that have been invaded by the infectious organism to be detected by the cells and of the immune system called the T lymphocytes, or the T lymphocytes is otherwise called as the T cells, And mainly the major histocompatibility complex molecules do this by the presenting the fragments of proteins, that is the peptides, belonging to the invaders on the surface of the cells, and that T cells mainly recognize the foreign peptide attached to the MSC molecule and binds to it. An action that mainly stimulates the T cells to either destroy or to kill the infected cells. And these mainly T cells and T cell surface mainly proteins CD4 and CD8 greatly enhance the interaction between the antigen presenting cell APC and the killer T cell, and between the APC and the T helper cell also. And the primary immunological function of the MSC molecules, therefore, it is to bind and present the antigen peptide on the surface of the cells for recognition by the antigen specific, mainly the T cells receptor or TCRS of the lymphocytes. What is antigen and what is antibody? What is the difference between this antigen and antibody? Antibody is nothing. Antibody is your immunoglobulins. That is the antibody. And antigens is the immunogens. And antibodies mainly it is the molecules synthesized by the organism to combat the foreign materials. Okay. These antibodies, it is the molecules mainly it is synthesized by the organism and it to combat the foreign materials. And antigens, it is a foreign materials elicits the antibody formation. And this antigen is the protein or polysaccharide molecule. Antigens is mainly may occur on the surface of the microbes or as the free molecules also. And this antigen mainly it binds to the macrophages to reach a helper T cell to initiate the immune response. And antigens is otherwise called as the immunogens. But in the antibody, each antibody is the immunoglobulin, and it's mainly it occurs on the surface of the plasma cells and also in the body fluids also. And these antibody it directly joins an antigen to destroy the latter. Antibodies are mainly classified into 5 classes. They are the IgA, IgD, IgE, IgG, IgM. Okay, these antibody again classified into 5 classes, and they are the IgA, IgD, IgE, IgG, IgM. What is IgA? This is the immunoglobulin A, and this immunoglobulin A mainly present in the secretion protect the mucosal surface, and it is mainly found in the genitourinary tract and GI tract, respiratory tract, tears and saliva. And this secreted in combination with the peptides and forms the secretory piece, is protected from proteolytic digestion. Okay. And second one is your immunoglobulin M. This immunoglobulin A mainly protect against the bacteria, and it gives them the early immune response, and present on the mainly it is present on the sites of lymphocytes, surface of the lymphocytes, and it stays confined to bloodstream, and mainly it is involved in the AG recognition. And immunoglobulin G. Immunoglobulin G is otherwise called as the IgG. This is a major defense against the virus, against the bacteria and the toxin. And it is the major Ig, 80% in the blood, can cross the capillary wall very easily. And it can cross mainly secreted into the milk, and it can cross placenta and transfers the immunity from the mother to the baby. And immunoglobulin D present on the surface of the B lymphocytes, and along with the IgM, immunoglobulin M plays a role in AG recognition. And immunoglobulin E, IgE, mainly protect against the organism which escaped IgA. A major difference against helminthes mediated allergy. And this IgA, these granules mainly contain a chemicals which leads to the inflammatory reaction, and also it entomotatic migration of the granulocyte. This is all about the different types of 5 types of antibodies: IgA, IgD, IgE, IgG, and IgM. And the immune mechanism, there are generally 2 types of immune mechanism in the immunity. One is the innate immunity, another one is the acquired immunity. What is innate immunity? Innate immunity means it refers to the basic resistance to the disease that is species processes the first line of defense against the infection. That is the innate immunity. In the innate immunity, mainly it refers to the antigen non-specific defense mechanism, and that a host use the immediately or within the several hours after the exposure to the almost any antigen. And the characteristic of the innate immunity response is responses are broad spectrum, means that is non-specific, and there is no memory or lasting protecting immunity, and there is a limited repertory scope of recognition molecules, and the response are mainly phylogenetically ancient. And in this, the characteristic of the innate immunity is it is the mainly natural killer cells, that is the NK cells, and the phagocytic cells like macrophages, neutrophils, and monocytes.
Ma'am, your voice is not audible.
Then phagocytosis. What is phagocytosis? Phagocytosis in the short notes. This is very important for the short notes. What is phagocytosis? Or 5 marks question. It's very important. Phagocytosis. Phagocytosis means it mainly involves the ingestion of the particular materials, including the whole pathogenic microorganism. You just remember like this: ingestion of all the pathogenic microorganism is called as the phagocytosis. Ingestion of the whole pathogenic microorganism is called as the phagocytosis. Mainly the plasma membrane expands around the particular material to form the large vesicles. That large vesicles called the phagosomes. Okay, and it is carried out either by the neutrophil or the macrophages. And the neutrophils are highly effective against the cause formation. Okay, means pyogenic bacteria. Neutrophils are mainly the highly effective against the pus-forming pyogenic bacteria. Macrophages are most effective against those microorganisms which is live within our cells. Then what is the mechanism of phagocytosis? In the phagocytosis, mainly phagocytosis, the organism is entrapped into the vacuoles known as the phagosomes. And the cytoplasmic granules, organelles, or the lysosomes fuse with the phagosomes, releasing powerful microvisceral substance. And these substances mainly the those which are dependent on the oxygen mechanism and those which are oxygen independent mechanism. Okay. Example for the oxygen dependent mechanism is superoxide anion, single oxygen hydroxyl free radicals, and the oxygen independent ones are the lysosomes or the proteolytic enzyme or the several other hydrolytic enzymes. And the complementary system. In the complementary system, what is complementary system? Mainly the microorganism, to remove mainly the microorganism by the phagocytosis require the phagocytes at the right place in the right time. The organism should adapt to the phagocytes. Many of these organisms may not be viable to this type of situation, And to deal with such a situation, therefore, once more non-specific defense mechanism is also found in the blood plasma. This is called as the complement system. And this complement system mainly contains about 20 proteins, which trigger can enter into the cascade reaction. And the system helps mainly to handle the microbial invasion basically by the three mechanisms. First is the some components of the complement system coat microorganism, and these organisms mainly with such a coat can be easily phagocytosed because of the receptors which are similar for the same complement components which coat the microorganism. And some components of the system simulate the lethal mechanism of the phagocytes released earlier, and mainly this will also release the histamine and the several other useful substances from the mast cell and the basophil granules also. And the complement pathway leads to the formation of membrane attack complex which stuffs a hole into the microbial cells walls, which mainly would leads to the entry of the water and the sodium ions into the microbial cells, leading towards a lysis process. Humoral mechanism. What is humoral mechanism? In the I already described the complementary system. In the this humoral mechanism means these are the some other humoral mechanism which help mainly for the innate immunity. And in humoral mechanism, one is the aqueous phase protein, and then interference and the natural killer cells and contribution of the eosinophils. That means first one is the natural killer cell. Natural killer cell is otherwise called as the NK cells. These cells are large size lymphocytes and specifically mainly equipped to kill the virally infected cells. Some of the virally infected cells mainly acquire the special glycoprotein on their surface, which signals their neighboring cells that they are in trouble and they need help. Okay. And interference. Interference are the soluble proteins mainly secreted naturally when cells becomes infected by the foreign bodies. And this infected lymphocyte mainly release the interference alpha, which is one out of the 14 subtypes. No. And other cells also types when infected by the some virus it release the interferon beta. In some viral cases also it secretes the interferon beta. And these interferons are released into the extracellular fluid when they diffuse to form the protective rings of the uninfectable cells. They are the limiting the spread of the infection. In the contribution of the eosinophils, there mainly these eosinophils are the specifically equipped to deal with lots of parasitic and all the helminthus worm infection. The coating of the helminthus and some complement components facilitates its adherence to the eosinophil, and mainly this contribution of eosinophil this release the several literal particles from the eosinophil granules which causes the death. And specific acquired immunity. Specific acquired immunity means what? In the specific acquired immunity refers to the antigen specific defense mechanism that takes several days to become the protective and the design to react with the remove a specific antigen. And this is the immunity one developed throughout the life. In the adaptive immunity usually improves upon repeated exposure to a given infection and involves mainly in the antigen presenting cells APC such as the macrophages, and the activation and the proliferation of the antigen specific B lymphocytes also. In our body, specifically in the human body, mainly can respond to antigen in the many two different way. One is the cell-mediated immune system. This cell-mediated immune system is called as the CMIS, and another one is the antibody-mediated immune system, that is the AMIS. Okay, these two antibody, that means immune system, human body responds to the antigen in the mainly two these two major categories. One is the cell-mediated immune system, that is the CMIs, and the another one is the antibody mediated immune system, that is the AMIS. And both these systems need antigen to come into action, and they mainly respond in the different way. And both are the B cells and the T cells of the lymphocytes mainly recognize the specific antigen by means of the antigen receptors bound to their plasma membrane. Then what is the scene of action? Mainly initially the lymphoid organs. Lymphoid organs is the bone marrow and the thymus, and the secondary organs are the lymph nodes and the lymphoid tissue and the spleen. When an AG microorganism enters in our body, one of the secondary lymphoid organs, that may be spleen, that may be lymph node, that may be lymphoid tissue, that secondary lymphoid organs mainly traps it and mounts an immune response. An exact organ involved depends at the site of the entry. Okay, and site of entry mainly tissues. It may be affected to the tissue or mucosal surface or in the bloodstream. If it will attack to the tissue, it mainly trap in draining lymph node, and in the bloodstream it trap in spleen, and mucosal surface mainly responses in mucosal associated lymphoid tissue. It is antibody mediated immune system, that is the AMIS. This antibody mediated immune response, this mainly it dissolves in blood, lymph and other body fluids, and binds the antigen and trigger a response to it. In AMIS, antibody mediated immune system, mainly it involves the production of the antibody molecules in response to the antigen, and it is mediated by the B lymphocytes, and these form the immunity. It is called as the humoral immunity. That means in the antibody mediated immune system is otherwise called as the humoral immunity. And what is the specific role of the AMIS? That means specific role of antibody mediated immune system. Mainly this antibody mediated immune system mainly defend the body against the different types of polysaccharides, capsules, bacteria, free viruses and toxins that enters the body fluid. That means blood and the lymph. How are the antibody formed? Mainly when the membrane antibodies on the B cell surface binds antigen, the B cells is activated and divides, producing a clone of daughter B cells. And the daughter B cells are of two types. One is the plasma B cells and another one is the memory B cells. Plasma B cells are the antibody factors, and mainly they secrete the antibody on the stimulation of the T helper cells. And the memory B cells is nothing. These memory B cells mainly live for a long time, and they serve to quickly dispose of the antigen in case reinfection of the same virus or the bacteria mainly occur. And how do antibodies act? Mainly the antibody binds to the specific antigens and inactive the invading microorganism or the foreign molecules, so that these are the conventionally disposed of by the phagocytes. How are the antigens disposed? Mainly these there are 5 types of antibody. One is the IgA, IgG, IgA, IgM and IgD. They are the 5 antigens in 5 different ways. They include mainly agglutination. These 5 types of antibodies are mainly responsible for the agglutination, neutralization. What is agglutination? Agglutination means certain antibodies causes the particular antigens like the red corpuscles bacteria to stick together in clumps, thus immobilizing them for easy disposable by the phagocytes through ingestion, and they are termed as the agglutinins. What is neutralization? The antibodies neutralize the antigens, viral or bacterial toxins, and make them effective. They are called the antitoxins. And the phagocytes dispose of the antigen antibody complexes. mainly 5 types of antibody. They are I already discussed IgG, IgA, IgM, IgD, and IgE. They mainly, this includes the complement activation. Complement activation means mainly the antibody antigen complex activate the complement proteins and the lyse walls of the bacteria, causing their disintegration and the initiate inflammatory response, osmomize antigens and attract the phagocytes to area of the infection. And what is CMIS? Cell-mediated immune system. Cell-mediated immune system is a immune response that does not involve the antibody. But in AMIS, 5 types of antibodies is there. But here, no antibodies is involved in the CMIS. But rather involves the production of the T lymphocytes, activated mainly the macrophages, activated the NK cells, cytokinase in response to the antigen, and it mediated by the T lymphocytes. CMIS T cells binds to the surface of the other cells and that display the antigen and trigger a response. What is the specific role of CMIS? This CMIS mainly defend the body against the bacteria, against the virus, and which have entered the host cells, and also against the protozoa, parasitic, fungus, and the worm infection. And these CMIS, it's the defensive cells cannot deal with the free antigens present in the body fluids. It mainly reacts with the foreign tissue transplants like the kidney transplant, and also mainly against body own cells which becomes cancerous. And the cancer cells are the perceived as the foreign cells. Cellular immunity therefore protect the body. This cellular immunity mainly protect the body by the activation antigen specific cytotoxic T lymphocytes. And these T lymphocytes that are mainly able to lyse body cells, displaying the epitopes of foreign antigen on their surface, such as the virus infected cells, cells with the intracellular bacteria, and the cancer cells displaying the tumor antigen. And mainly this and activating the macrophages and the NK cells also. And it also stimulates the cells to secrete the variety of cytokinase, and that influence the function of the other cells also. It mainly involves in the adaptive immune response and innate immune responses also. What is the mode of action? In the mode of action, mainly the cellular immune response is given by the T cells, and like the B cells in the AMIS, these are the separate T cells for each type of antigen that mainly invades the body. And the T cells have the lifespan 4 to 5 years or even longer also. And they acquire the ability to recognize the particular non-self cells, surface and molecules in the thymus. What is the role of macrophages in the immune system? What is the main chief role of macrophages? Macrophages is the WBC, white blood corpuscles that mainly continually search for the foreign, that means non-self antigen molecules, viruses and the microbes. When they found the macrophages, engulf and destroy them. And the process mainly includes the macrophages response to the infection, and it engulf the microbes and display the antigens to alert the lymphocytes, and the antigen is held onto the surface of the macrophages by a protein which makes the macrophages as the cell. And with the antigen flagged on it, the macrophages move to the nearest lymph node and meets various type of lymphocytes where the infection takes place. And helper T cells is also there, and that helper T cells recognize the macrophages antigen flag and joins it, and this initiates the immune reaction. Simultaneously, the macrophages secretes all the endogenous pyrogens, that is the activate the T and the B cells of the growth and the proliferate. Proliferate means maturation and cause the fever, microbial action, slowdowns also. In our body now, mainly these B cells, macrophages, T cells, it interact to produce the immune response. Okay, due to the presence of B cells, T cells, macrophages, it's mainly responsible for the immune response. And this infection mainly disappear due to the AG-AP interaction along with the killer T cell and non-self cell interaction. When the infection will be disappear, because of the due to the AG agglutination and AP interaction along with the killer cell. Killer cell is the T cells and the non-self cells interaction. Some of the specific lymphocytes remain in the lymphatic tissue or the memory or the prime cells, and they are mainly produce the killer cells if the same antigen reappear. Hence, a second attack of infection and disease elicits the quick abundant antibody formation, and the memory cells gives rise to the more effector cells and memory cells. These memory cells lives long, and some even for the whole life also. That's why the disease which attack in the childhood do not attack again also. Memory cells are stored in the spleen and the lymph node. The cells, memory cells mainly present in the lymph nodes and the spleen. The leukocytes development and the regulation. Development of the granulocytes. Granulocytes are mainly formed in the bone marrow, that is present inside our bone from the totipotent hemopoietic stem cells, that is the myeloid series, blood forming stem cells in the bone marrow. And the development of the granulocytes mainly the myeloblast. The first identical cells of the granulocytes series in the myeloblast, and it mainly has a large nucleus. In the myeloblast, you can got the very large nucleus is having the no granules in the cytoplasm and having 2 to 5 numbers of nucleoli and capable of cell division and food motility also. Promyelocyte means division and maturation of the myeloblast is promyelocytes. Myelocyte A, this stage is the primary granule in the cytoplasm, and the myelocyte after the promyelocytes division and the maturation, the next stage is the myelocytes. And in this the myelocyte stage, the nucleus is mainly flattened on one side, and the secondary granules in the cytoplasm are seen. The metamyelocytes, what is metamyelocyte? In the metamyelocytes, no longer divide or produce granules. Mainly, myelocytes are the last cells to undergo cell division. After myelocytes, there is no cell division. In this stage, the nucleus changes shape from the round oval to indented and nucleoli is absent. And more secondary granules seen in the cytoplasm and fewer primary granules seen in the cytoplasm. Amoeboid movement appear. Then Barn cells. Barn cells are the juvenile granulocytes, and that juvenile granulocytes, where these Barn cells are the largest stage of metamyelocytes. By this stage, the nucleus is deeply indented, and so that it resembles a hairband, and the cytoplasm is filled with the specific granules. And the mature granulocytes are completely developed cells with a bilobe nucleus. Neutrophils are mainly abundant among the granulocytes, and granulopoiesis therefore generally refers to the formation of the neutrophils. And the factors, mainly growth factors which affect the granulopoiesis. One is the interleukin I. Interleukin is the cytokine found in the male. It is found in the WBC, and it mainly stimulates to the light infection. Okay, And interleukin is the protein factor which is mainly produced by the T lymphocyte and the macrophages in the presence of antigen. And these T lymphocytes to activate and proliferate interleukin act on relative early progenitor cells to simulate the proliferation. Another one is the tumor necrosis factor. Tumor necrosis factor is the TNF. What is necrosis? Necrosis means break टिश्यू का break होना, इसको necrosis बोला जाता है. The name itself is become because of its inhibitory effect. In some of the tumor cells, it is produced by the macrophages only, and it mainly affect are known to similar to that of the IL-I, IL-1, and TNF stimulate the granulocytic activity, TNF, that means tumor necrosis factor. These TNF mainly stimulate the granulocytic activity by involving the pathway through the granulocytes, macrophages colony stimulating the factors. These granulocytes, macrophage colony stimulating factor, GM-CSF, stem cells obtained from the bone marrow are capable of giving rise to the counter colonies of the daughter cell in the spleen, and their growth factors were identified on the basis of their ability for colonial proliferation. Proliferation means maturation. Interleukin 3, this interleukin 3 is otherwise is the multi-CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. It is mainly produced by the T lymphocytes. I already discussed about the T lymphocytes, and these interleukin 3s, IL-3s, or multi-CSF. CSF is the cerebrospinal fluid. It is mainly produced by the T lymphocytes, and it also stimulates the proliferation of the precursor for the neutrophils, eosinophils, basophil, and the mast cell. And it also stimulates the effector response of the mature eosinophilia and the T lymphocytes. It can activate many cells other than the IL. And gametocytes colony stimulating factor, that is the GCSF, and this is mainly produced by the monocyte fibroblast and endothelial cells due to the stimulation of IL-1. And this GCSF is mainly helpful for the it stimulates the neutrophil proliferation, their phagocyto T capability, and mainly it produces the cytotoxic free radicals such as the superoxide components, thus activate the immune system. Macrophages, CSF, MCSF. These macrophages mainly produced by the macrophages, fibroblast, and endothelial cells. Inhibitory factors. Inhibitor factors is the hemopoiesis may be inhibited by the decrease in the level of stimulatory growth factors, and generally there in competition no particular substance can actively inhibit their process. Okay, and but now it is known that the tissue specific locally produced inhibitor of the cell proliferation are the chalones. In development of the agranulocyte, in the agranulocyte, I already discussed the monocytes and the lymphocytes. Agranulocytes mainly develop in the bone marrow in the thymus, and they start as the stem cells. And they are mainly primarily lymphoid organs where the pluripotent stem cells are from lymphoblast, and it also they proliferate and differentiate into the immature lymphocytes. The ones which mature in bone marrow are called the B lymphocytes, and another group which mature is in the thymus, it is called as the, if it will be growing the bone marrow, then it is called as the B lymphocytes. If it will be growing the thymus gland, then it is called as the T lymphocytes. In vitro detection of antigen antibody interaction, in vitro detection of antigen antibody interaction, any infection mainly caused require proper treatment. Okay, after any infection it requires a proper treatment, and this can be achieved only if the correct organism is identified. Unless until you will be not identified the proper organism, the microorganism, you can treat that disorder. Sometimes the organism like the virus cannot be detected. An infection is the accessible part of the body can occur. During such situation, it becomes necessary to depend on presence of specific antibodies in the blood as an indirect evidence of an infection. And this is mainly obtained by the specific antigen-antibody interaction, and they can be detected through the various laboratory tests. And some of the common tests like the precipitation, agglutination, immunoassay, immunoblotting, and immunohistochemistry. This is all about your immunity. Now I will discuss about the cardiovascular system. What is cardiovascular system? Cardio means what?
Heart.
Heart.
Vascular means
The system containing
Blood
heart
vessels.
and blood vessels through which circulation takes place is the cardiovascular system.
very good, very good. Cardio means the medical term of the heart is the cardio. Vascular is nothing. Vascular is the blood vessels. The innervation of the blood vessels inside our cardiovascular system. That means heart system. It is called as the cardiovascular system. Cardiovascular. It is very important subject, and it's very important in every exam. Na, you will got the question from this unit. Cardiovascular system is very vital for you. In cardiovascular system, heart is the pump, and the blood vessels is the pipelines, and the control of our heart through the nervous system, and control of our blood vessels through the nerves. And what is the heart made up of? That means pacemaker and the conduction tissue is there. Different types of tissues present inside our heart, and the cardiac muscles. The uniqueness of our heart, the cardiac output, the cardiac cycle. In the blood pressure, what is blood pressure? Mainly the factors affecting the blood pressure, factors regulating the blood pressure, pathophysiology of the HDN, hypertension, myocardial ischemia and the infarction, aerobics exercise and diet, how to keep our your heart healthy, ECG.
Hello, ma'am. Hello. It's not audible, ma'am.
The cardiovascular system mainly it consists of the heart and a network of pipelines. Pipelines is the blood vessels. Okay, and heart. First, I will discuss about the heart. Heart is the highly muscular and vascular organs, and that heart and its major component are mainly it consists of four chambers. Heart is having the four chambers, two atrium and two ventricle. Okay, and mainly the atrium, two atrium and two ventricle is there. Mainly the atrium, the right atrium, mainly. Right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle and left ventricle is there. Mainly the right atrium, the function of the right atrium is this right atrium receives the blood from the body through the two large veins. It is the superior and the inferior vena cava. After receiving the blood from the atrium, This blood, it empties blood into the another chambers of the heart and the right ventricles. The right ventricle mainly pumps the deoxygenated blood to the lungs through the pulmonary artery. First, you remember heart is having the four chambers, two atrium and two ventricle is there. Right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. Mainly in the right atrium, mainly from the right atrium, it receives the blood from the body through the two veins, larger veins. It is the superior vein, superior vena cava, and the inferior vena cava. After receiving the blood from the superior and the inferior vena cava, it mainly empties the blood into the another chambers of the heart and the right ventricle, and after that the right ventricles mainly pumps the impure blood. Okay, impure blood is otherwise called as the deoxygenated blood to the lungs through the pulmonary artery. RA is the right atrium, RV is the right ventricle, A is the aorta, PV is the pulmonary vein, LV is the left ventricle, LA is the left atrium. Okay, and inside of about the right ventricle, which pumps the blood into the pulmonary trunk and diverts into the right and left pulmonary artery. That means in the right ventricle, it mainly pumps the blood into the pulmonary trunk, and that pulmonary trunk again divides into two. One is the right pulmonary arteries and another one is the left pulmonary artery. Left pulmonary artery and right pulmonary artery means we supply the blood to the left lungs. It is called as the left pulmonary artery. If it supplies the blood to the right lungs, then it is called as the right pulmonary artery. A semilunar valve called the pulmonary valve. That pulmonary valve mainly which prevents the flow of blood, back flow of blood into the right ventricle. Due to the presence, if you remember this point, a semilunar valve is there. That semilunar valve called as the pulmonary valve. Due to the presence of this pulmonary valve only, which mainly prevents the back flow of blood back into the right ventricle, and it mainly guards the opening of the right ventricle into the pulmonary trunk. And mainly the blood from the pulmonary trunk, it enters the pulmonary circulation, okay, and it receives the oxygen from the lungs. Blood from the pulmonary trunk, then it enters the pulmonary circulation. Pulmonary circulation means it will enters the blood to the lungs, and after it enters the blood to the lungs, it receives the oxygen from the lungs. And this oxygenated blood, you remember one point, oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood. What do you mean by oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood?
Oxygen contents in blood is called oxygenated blood. Carbon dioxide contains blood is called deoxygenated.
Puspanjali ma'am, कहले what is oxygenated and what is deoxygenated blood?
When the blood is collected from our body that contains carbon dioxide, so these are the deoxygenated blood, and the bloods which are filled in our lungs, and there is the exchange of oxygen and containing oxygen. These are the oxygenated blood.
Rajalasmi ma'am, what is oxygenated blood?
Oxygenated blood is when blood from the heart to the body. Blood is oxygenated blood, and from body to heart is deoxygenated blood.
Body to heart.
Shomya Prabha? Swam Prabha, what is deoxygenated blood? Swati?
Yes, ma'am.
What is deoxygenated blood? What do you mean by deoxygenated blood? Listen, oxygenated blood means it is the pure blood. Okay, oxygenated blood means it's pure blood. Deoxygenated blood means it is completely impure blood. Okay, this is the difference between oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. ये क्या है ना एक्चुअली ये जो सर्कुलेटरी सिस्टम इसको थोड़ा मीन्स पढ़ाने के लिए आपको थोड़ा डायग्रामेटिकली अगर दिखाने से ना वो इजी रहेगा आपको.
Yes, ma'am. Left actually,
Otherwise,
right ventricular, it enters from
the
in
system
heart.
in this ना all the system ना it's particular the physiology anatomy physiology में
Yes,
क्या
heart,
होता है
lung.
ना उसको डायग्रामेटिकली दिखाने से आपको थोड़ा आपको समझ में आ जाएगा. ठीक है ना, क्योंकि आपको पूरा हार्ट का स्ट्रक्चर करके उसको थोड़ा आपको शो करना पड़ेगा. दिस वन इज द राइट एट्रियम एंड दिस द लेफ्ट एट्रियम, right ventricle, left ventricle, and in between the atrium and the ventricle, in the right side there is a tricuspid valve is there, and how the valve will be opening, and what is the function of this tricuspid valve, and what is the function of bicuspid valve, what is the function of what mitral valve, and what is SA node, where it is situated, and what is the function of SA node, what is AP node, what is Purkinje fiber. All these things now, if I, it's very important to draw one diagram and show everything. So otherwise, if I will say something and you will, it's little bit difficult in your part. Okay, not to receive.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Today I will theoretically I will explain today, and if possible, then tomorrow or day after tomorrow I will plan for the diagrammatically presentation. Okay. Because a cardiovascular system is not only the one system. There are other system is also there. Understood, na? Each and every system. If we will draw the diagram and if I will explain, that's very better for you and for me also. For explaining me, it's easy, and for the understanding point of view, it's very easy for you also. Understood now what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes,
Yes, lungs in after deoxygenated blood came from vein
The theory.
in heart, and then it enters to lungs, and how it again comes to heart. This part we should
In
read.
the heart also conductive tissue is also there. In the conductive tissue like the SA node, AB node, Purkinje fiber, and every things not related that valve also. If I will say something, it's little bit difficult for you. Okay, today I will be continue like this only. Tomorrow onwards, if possible, then I will try for the diagram. Okay. And mainly it's very important topic. That's why मैं पढ़ा रही हूँ. अगर किसी को भी कुछ प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है तो आप मुझे पूछ सकते हो. ठीक है ना, ऐसे अगर समझ में नहीं आ रहे तो again you can ask me. The blood from the pulmonary trunk, mainly from the pulmonary trunk, it enters the pulmonary circulation, and from the pulmonary circulation and receives the oxygen from the lungs. Okay, this oxygenated blood means that pure blood flows through the pulmonary vein to the left atrium. Pulmonary vein के माध्यम से वो left atrium को जाएगा, and left atrium से वो जो pure blood होगा तो वो pure blood enters the left ventricle, and that left ventricle is the main pumping chamber sending the blood through the aorta to the all of the body parts except the lungs. जो left ventricle होता है, left ventricle is the हमारा main pumping chamber होता है, and from that left ventricle only it's sending the blood through the aorta to the all of our body parts, but it will not supply to the lungs. And there is a valve. Valve means at the junction of the right atrium and right ventricle. Okay, where the right atrium and right ventricle be means junction का point की left atrium and सॉरी राइट एट्रियम एंड राइट वेंट्रिकल के बीच में एक जंक्शन होता है. इस जंक्शन में एक भाल्व होता है, ए भाल्व को ट्राइकस्पिड भाल्व बोला जाता है, and this tricuspid valve ensures the one-way flow of blood. That means it prevents the blood flow back from the right ventricle to the right atrium. Okay, that tricuspid valve is mainly present in between the right atrium and the right ventricle. And when it will be opens, na valve means when it will be opens through this tricuspid valve only, the blood will be passes from the right atrium to the where right atrium to the right ventricle, and it will prevent the blood backflow, flowing of the blood backflow from the right ventricle to the right atrium. And similarly, there is another valve called the bicuspid valve, and that bicuspid valve is present. Bicuspid valve is otherwise called as the mitral valve or left atrioventricular valve. Okay, this bicuspid valve is otherwise called as the mitral valve, or it is called as the what? Left atrioventricular. And there is a valve, it is called as the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve or the left atrioventricular valve. This left atrioventricular valve is mainly present at the junction of the left atrium and the left ventricle. Okay, and this bicuspid valve, tricuspid valve, these are two major valve present inside our heart. This left ventricle mainly pumps the blood into the aorta. Okay, and the branches of the aorta are the arteries, and it is called the systemic arteries. And mainly these systemic arteries, the network in is much more extensive than the pulmonary arteries or the network. And that left ventricle has to pump the blood at the much higher pressure than the right ventricle. Mainly, this left ventricle has to pump the blood at a much higher pressure than that of the right ventricle, and this is made possibly by the much thicker wall, that musculature, than that of the right ventricle. Blood vessels and the pipelines. What is blood vessels? Blood vessels are the pipelines of the heart. Okay, blood vessels are the pipelines of the heart, and mainly aorta, arteries, arterioles, capillaries, veins are the blood vessels of the cardiovascular system. First one is your aorta. Aorta, arteries, arterioles, capillaries, veins, and last one is your blood vessels. Blood vessels are And these veins are the blood vessels of the cardiovascular system, and these branches of the cardiovascular system may be linked to a tree which divides into the very smaller thinner division. Outer divides into arteries, from arteries into the arterioles, and arterioles into the capillaries, and large from capillaries joined to form the veins. Okay, starting with the aorta, and the aorta, mainly aorta supplies the pure blood to the entire body. You remember this point? This aorta mainly supply the pure blood to the entire body, and this elastic tissue, mainly elastic tissue present in the aortic wall, it absorbs the what shocks of blood striking against it from the heart. And this, along with the decrease in the diameter of the blood vessels away from the aorta, changes the spotty pulsatile blood flow into the continuous flow. And this is termed the not required. Arterioles are the resistance vessels. When their diameter is reduced, when the arterioles diameter will be reduced, the blood flow with a much greater resistance and vice versa. And this is the manner in which the blood flow is redistributed during the aerobic exercise to other parts of the body. And the arterioles are the healthy blood supply to the vital organs of the body. Mainly the arterioles supply the blood to the brain, the heart during the exercise, and decreasing the blood supply to the intestine. That is why there is a wisdom in the saying that one should not exercise after meal. Okay. Continuous blood flow is essential for exchange of the carbon dioxide and oxygen, food and water across the blood vessels called the capillaries. Okay, what is capillaries? In the capillaries, the continuous blood flow is essential for the exchange of all food, oxygen, CO2 and water. And the mainly this capillaries is a very thin walled narrow tubes without any muscular cord. In the capillary, you will not got any kind of muscular cord. And these capillaries come in intimate contact with the cells while picking CO2 and waste product from them. And that is why they are termed as the exchange of vessels, exchange of blood vessels. And veins are nothing. Veins are the blood vessels, and they're extremely very thin. They lack the strength of the solid arterial wall, but that are extremely flexible. Their main function is to store the blood in the large capacity, and they are called as the capacitance vessels. And mainly the veins of the calf muscles is the lower leg are termed as the peripheral heart. It is called as the peripheral heart. In the lower limbs ना calf muscles is there. जहाँ आपको आप लोग देखते हैं बार before diabetic means in the pre-diabetic cases, the patients are very complaining regarding the calf muscles pain. At the midnight they are complaining the calf muscles stiffness of the calf muscles. In that cases, na the veins of these calf muscles in the lower legs are termed as the peripheral hearts because they store a lot of blood that is pumped back by the muscles action during running to the heart. And in our heart, na there are the mainly heart is controlled by the nervous system. Okay. And this there are the mainly two nervous system. It is mainly controlled by our heart is controlled by these two nervous system. One is the PNS parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system. They constitute the autonomic system. Auto means independent. Okay, auto means independent from the rest. A system that is different and unique. Okay. And sympathetic, as the word suggests, means it sympathize. That means the body sympathize during the fight, flight, and fight reaction. Okay. For example, heart beat faster when in the dark or when frightened. And in these cases, the heart rate will be increases. And termed as the positive chronotropic effect. Okay. In that case, your heart rate will be increases. In the medical term, it is called as the positive chronotropic effect. In positive chronotropic effect, chrono means chronological, meaning related to the time or the rate. The heart also beats with an increased force, as you may have experienced your heart punching against a heavy chest after a spirit, and this is called as the positive inotropic effect. Okay, one is the positive chronotropic effect, and another one is the positive inotropic effect. Positive inotropic effect, as the increase in the force is brought about by the change in ion concentration across the cell membrane. Okay, in this case, now positive inotropic effect, the change in ion concentration across the cell membrane. Mainly the calcium within the cells makes the heart beat stronger. Okay, due to the presence of this calcium only, it makes the heartbeat stronger. And mainly milk gives strength, and milk is the very good calcium for the heart. And the rate of transmission of the electrical impulse increase during the sympathetic situation. Okay, the rate of transmission of the impulses will be increases during the sympathetic situation, and it's termed as the positive dromotropic effect. Positive dromotropic effect, and increase in the excitability of the cardiac tissue is called as the positive bathmotropic effect. And another system is the parasympathetic system. This system has an effect just opposite to the sympathetic system, and mainly it relaxes the heart muscles, and it also decreases in the when the parasympathetic system will be activated. Now, at that time, your heart rate will be decreases and decrease the heart rate. That is the negative chronotropic effect. When your heart rate will be decreases, it is called as the negative chronotropic effect. And the force of contraction, that is the negative inotropic. The conduction rate, that is the negative dromotropic, and the excitability of the tissue, that is the negative bathmotropic. And the nerve mainly that supplies the heart is atria autonomous, the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is supplied to the heart, or the name suggests vagus is the vagabond, and mainly vagus supplies the it also supplying the digestive tract, heart, and the voice box, that is the larynx. And the heart is also supplied by the right and left bhagi. Bhagi means vagus, and the parasympathetic system only supplies the ventricle. The sympathetic system only supply the blood to the ventricle only. Okay, and the heart changes in a balance of positive and negative forces, that is the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. And the sympathetic nerves have a chemical neurotransmitter. It is called as the noradrenaline. The sympathetic nerve have a chemical neurotransmitter, that is called as the noradrenaline. And the parasympathetic nerve release mainly acetylcholine and the postganglionic nerve ending. Okay, two types of chemical neurotransmitter will be released. By the activation of the sympathetic nerve, it mainly secretes the non-adrenaline hormone, non-adrenaline. Due to the activation of the sympathetic nervous system, it mainly releases the non-adrenaline, and due to the activation of the parasympathetic nerve, it mainly releases the acetylcholine and postganglionic nerve endings. Okay, this is all about your control of our heart through the nerves, how the vagus nerve, the sympathetic, parasympathetic nerve, how when the parasympathetic nerve will be stimulated at that time, how this post-ganglionic nerve ending and the acetylcholine will be secreted, and this is the chemical neurotransmitter. And the sympathetic, when the sympathetic nerve will be stimulated at that time, a neurotransmitter, the non-adrenaline hormone will be secreted. This is all about your control of our heart through the nervous system. And blood vessels, I already discussed about the aorta, arteries, and arterioles, capillaries, veins, blood vessels, and the cardiovascular system. How the aorta mainly supplies the oxygenated blood to the entire body. Okay, and the elastic tissue present in the outer coils mainly observe the shocks of the blood striking against it from the heart mainly. And the arterioles is arterioles is nothing; it is the resistance vessels. And when the diameter is reduced, the blood flow with a much greater resistance, and vice versa. And I already discussed about the what is that right atrium, left pulmonary vein, mitral valve, atrioventricular valve, tricuspid valve, bicuspid valve. I already discussed about the conduction system of the heart and pulmonary, what is the role of pulmonary veins, and the semilunar valve is also called the pulmonary valve. Mm. And how the superior and the inferior, I already discussed about the superior and the inferior vena cava. Mainly these two vena cava, superior and inferior vena cava, it receives the blood, right atrium mainly receives the blood from the body through the two large veins. It is called called as the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, and it empties the blood into another chamber of the heart with the right ventricle, and mainly the right ventricle pumps the impure blood to the lungs through the pulmonary artery. Okay, this is the cardiovascular system. Next class, I will discuss about briefly discuss about the circulatory system. The circulatory system is otherwise called as the cardiovascular system. And what is the conducting system of the heart? Briefly, I will discuss about what the role and function of the SA node, AB node, tricuspid valve, bicuspid valve, and Purkinje fibers, everything. Okay. All of you understood what is cardiovascular system? समझ में आया क्या कार्डियोवास्कुलर सिस्टम में? कुछ भी नहीं राजलक्ष्मी
मैम थोड़ा बहुत समझ में आया.
एक्चुअली तो पूरा ही अभी नहीं हुआ है ना, मैं थोड़ा ही ब्रीफ करी हूँ. पूरा तो सिस्टम अभी तक मैंने कंप्लीट नहीं किया. अगर हम लोग मीन्स दैट डायग्राम की तरह अगर समझाएंगे तो इट्स वेरी इजी फॉर यू. एंड बिकॉज इतना फिजियोलॉजी मीन्स हमको एनाटॉमी एंड फिजियोलॉजी बोथ को दिखाना है, स्ट्रक्चरली एंड फंक्शनली हमको दिखाना है. तो मैं ऐसे ही थ्योरी की तरह पढ़ा रही हूँ. फिर भी अब मैं तो आज कुछ भी नहीं शुरू ही किया है. जस्ट द नेक्स्ट क्लास ऑनवर्ड्स आई विल ब्रीफली डिस्कस अबाउट दिस सर्कुलेटरी सिस्टम. Okay, and what is hypertension, what is blood pressure, what is the conducting tissue, everything I will be discuss briefly. Okay.
मैम एक क्वेश्चन है.
हाँ
मैम डाउट है, आपने बताया कि वी शुड नॉट एक्सरसाइज आफ्टर हैविंग अ मील. मैम रीजन जानना है, रीजन क्लियर नहीं हुआ.
हाँ, आफ्टर मील के बाद हम लोग अगर देखो इमीडिएटली जब भी हम लोग कुछ भी एक्सरसाइज करते हैं, हमारा मोटो क्या होता है, क्यों हम लोग एक्सरसाइज कर रहे हैं? हमारा बॉडी को ज़्यादा ऑक्सीजनेशन करने के लिए. ओके, ऑक्सीजनेशन इज द प्रोसेस. हमारा बॉडी को ऑक्सीजन का ईच एंड एवरी टिश्यू लेवल तक पहुंचना हमारा मेन जो मोटो है ना. एक्सरसाइज के माध्यम से हम we will increase first our blood circulation. If we will increase the blood circulation, not only the circulation rate will be increases, along with the circulation rate na, the oxygen consumption is also increases, and the saturation of the oxygen will be increases. Along with the oxygen saturation, the hemoglobin supply of hemoglobin will be also increase. Because जब हमारा एक जगह में, एक टिश्यू में, एक ब्रेन में जहाँ भी आपका ऑक्सीजन पहुंचेगा तो उसके नॉट ओनली ऑक्सीजन उधर जगह जाएगा, उसके साथ ही आपका हीमोग्लोबिन भी उधर जाएगा. लेकिन जब हम लोग कुछ खाना खाएंगे या पेट भरा रहेगा तो क्या होगा, हमारा जो एक्टिविटीज हम लोग कुछ भी हम लोग करेंगे प्रॉपरली हम लोग नहीं कर पाएंगे. अगर भी करेंगे तो हमारा जो करने का जो मकसद है, जो ऑक्सीजन रेट, सैचुरेशन रेट एंड हमारा जो ईच टिश्यू एंड सेलुलर लेवल में जितना ऑक्सीजन पहुंचना चाहिए वो नहीं पहुंच पाएंगे. इसकी वजह से हमारा अगर खाली पेट में होगी तो हमारा बॉडी का जो बेसिक मेटाबॉलिक रेट वो भी थोड़ा इंक्रीज होता है। हम लोग जब खाना पेट में पूरा भर देते हैं तो तब हमारा, इसीलिए तो बोला जाता है ना, खाने के बाद भी हमको आधा घंटा 45 मिनट हमको थोड़ा इधर उधर होना चाहिए, क्योंकि हमारा बॉडी हम जितना लिया है थोड़ा सा तो एक्सपेंडिचर होना चाहिए, otherwise it will be causes the different types of disorder. That's why proper oxygenation होना and proper each and every place में hemoglobin पहुंचना एंड हमारा जो बेसिक BMR जो होता है ना, बेसिक मेटाबॉलिक रेट, उसको भी इंक्रीज होने के लिए खाली पेट जरूरी है। इसलिए खाने के बाद अगर भी हम लोग कुछ